Welcome to the Chess Angle. This is not your typical chess podcast. If you're an amateur or club-level player, the Chess Angle is for you. Our content is aimed at busy adults who are serious about the game but have limited study time. Featured guests include both amateur and titled players alike. And now, here's your host, Director of the Long Island Chess Club, Neil Bellon.
Welcome, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. A shout out to our sponsor, Chessable. Their courses are fantastic. Visit chessable.com today. There is a link in the show notes, as well as a link for our landing page, which has a list of some of my favorite courses. Just some housekeeping. There will not be an episode next week on November 27th. I'm going to be taking off for Thanksgiving weekend, but we'll have a new episode dropping on December the 4th. Okay, so I'm going to take next weekend off, and my guest this week is National Master Nick Figorito. Nick recently earned the title of National Master, and so I wanted to pick his brain about achieving that title and what that process was like. I know many of the listeners may be aspiring to achieve that one day. A master ranking, of course, is a USCF rating of 2200 or higher. So, Nick, two things. Congratulations on making master. That's fantastic. And thanks for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Neil. And I do want to say, I really think you do a great job with hosting the Long Island chess tournaments and also the podcast. I've listened to your podcast in the past, and I think everything that you do is a great job for chess.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. That means a lot coming from, someone of your level. So very cool. So I want to start with a couple of things. So I know you do some coaching. We'll get into that, but you're working like a full-time day job now, right? Correct?
Right. Yeah. I work a full-time day job.
Okay. And what do you, if I may ask, like, what do you do?
I'm a financial systems administrator. Basically what I do is I mess around with some metadata. Me explaining, like I'm accounting basically, but I'm kind of like the technical part of accounting, right? So I make acquisitions in the system and stuff like that, and company acquires something, I set it up. We need to get rid of something, I delete it. Anything to do with any sort of data in the system, I work with.
Right. Now, is that in the city? Is that in Manhattan, or are you on the island?
I used to be in Melville, the corporate office, but actually, luckily for me, I think, is that the company decided to go full-time remote. So most of it, like, what was nice about it was I would have to drive like an hour there and an hour back. Now I can spend most of my time, either driving after work, either to the tournaments, which I used to do, or I just spend extra time either working or doing other things. And we're now full-time remote. So we used to be in Melville, but now we're remote.
Okay. Yeah. It's amazing how that has changed for so many professions, especially the private sector, not so much for what I do as a school teacher, but for the private sector, it seems like so many companies now, it's either full-time remote or there's a hybrid, and you see less and less people actually going to an office from 9 to 5 in like a physical space.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So, okay. Now, as far as your coaching and your teaching, it's my understanding, so you are doing some chess teaching. I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. I do chess coaching. Most of it's on the side. It's not a full-time job of mine, but I do enjoy being part of the chess atmosphere. Many of my favorite things is just doing chess related stuff. So I'll be coaching. I have a couple students and I do a class every week, but it isn't like huge. I don't do a lot of work. Okay.
And now you teach privately also?
Yeah, I teach privately. I have a whole bunch of private students, and then I have a class I do every Saturday.
So what kind of things are you doing in that class? I'm just kind of curious how that works.
It's mostly beginner. So the classes depend on how strong the kids are. I've had a couple of them for a while, like maybe a year or so. So, I teach them all from the beginning, how the pieces move, then maybe go to some checkmates, some basic things. Then then you get more complicated. Maybe you'll do ladder checkmate. Then you'll do stalemate, and you'll work your way up to all the rules. And then when you get advanced, you'll teach them how to castle, control the center, stuff like that. So it's all basic stuff. I don't have any in that class. It isn't anybody that is like really advanced or anything. It's more or less a couple of beginners and then some advanced beginners, as so to speak.
Now, I want to pick your brain quite a bit about how you achieved 2,200. Tell me about I want to hear about the final push, so to speak, because I know you were coming to the club for a while. You were around 2,100, right? About 2,100. Right. So that last 100 points, those last 100 points to get to 2,200, tell me what that was like.
So I actually have a couple funny things. So actually, it almost didn't happen because for me, the problem is that I have a full-time job. So half the time I could be dragged into a meeting late. I might have to do extra work. And I have to drive at least an hour to go. Either it depends on which one I want to go to. If I want to go to your place, yours is actually the closest. It might take me between 45 minutes, sometimes more depending on traffic. But if I wanted to go to like Queens or I want to go to Nassau, those are meeting in the same place now. That's over an hour. So the problem was that it would take like an hour or so drive, and I'd do a 9 to 5 or 8:30 to 5 job, and then I would have to drive an hour, then have to play a game with 40% energy. After a while, I had a couple decent results. I was moving up to like 2150 or so, but the problem was, it was painful to do it, and I wanted to stop. At one point, I had lost to a pretty decent player. He had a great game against me. His name was Ryan Lee. All credit to him. He had a really good game against me, and he beat me. But at that point, I kind of was like, all right, it's so difficult to play, well, and also have the energy to play while you're doing a full-time job. But I have a good friend, Brian Caron. He convinced me to keep playing he said, okay, you can do it. And he kind of convinced me. So actually, amazingly, after he convinced me because I wanted to kind of stop at around 2150-ish because I enjoy doing chess, but doing the tournaments was so much energy. And, there's a lot of people who wanted me to hit that title. So he said, okay, you can do it, and I'll give it one last shot. It was kind of amazing at that point. I went on, I think I counted a 25 game no lose streak, which included playing people like Tim Mirabile. I had a lot of lucky breaks in the games. I was losing against Parham. I can't remember his name. Parham.
I know you're talking about Paryami, I think is his last name.
Paryami, yeah. I was losing against him, and I got a lucky draw. Tim had a couple of blunders, and I got a little lucky there. And I think it just worked out. Whereas, it kind of just happened. Like I kind of went on a really long non-loss streak, basically. That was basically what happened. I had some. I wouldn't say bad results, but I had a couple draws against Jared Tavares, and I have a lot of respect for Tavares too because he just comes in wanting to throw down. Like he doesn't play for quick draws. He isn't I have people that'll play 10 moves and offer me a draw, but Jared Tavares comes in and wants to kill me.
Absolutely. Yeah, he was a guest a few episodes back, and we spoke about that. I'm surprised his rating isn't. I mean, he bounces around 1,900, 2,000.
I think, in my personal opinion, at least the games I've played against him, I have not done well. We've played 4 games, and I've won 1. He's won 1, and he actually killed me in a game. It was 22 moves. He just absolutely blew me off the board. And there were 2 games that were a draw. I think maybe I was winning in one of them. But regardless, he's played really well against me. And it might even be the style matchup. Jared Tavares has a very attacking style, and I like more positional type style. So my tactics aren't great, and Jared always gets me in these positions that I find difficult to play. So I think it's a stylistic matchup which benefits him a lot. But I agree with you. 1,900 I think is pretty low for him. I definitely think he can. He's been over 2,000. I think he can get back there.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I agree with what you said earlier, and I don't want to sound like I'm making excuses or anything, but it is very hard to play in a rated chess tournament after a full day of work.
Oh, it's exhausting. It's absolutely exhausting.
I'm up at 5:45, I'm teaching this and everything's great. I love my job. I love everything, but it's just, it's very hard to do because you've had a day and you're sitting there. It's 8, 9 at night. It's not easy. I haven't fully figured it out. I mean, some days you deal with it better than others, but it's not easy. It's not easy. So I completely understand what you're saying. And the problem is too, if you're a little off because you're tired or whatever, and you're playing a lower rated opponent who's just really feeling it, you might have a really tough night.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree with you. And that's one of the reasons why, like, I still like doing chess. Like I played in my first title Tuesday, yesterday, but for me to play in a club at 9:00 at night is just exhausting for me. So I'm kind of happy that I made the title. So, friends and family aren't like, when are you going to hit master? I'm like, all right, I'm already there. But now I'm kind of, it's nice because I don't need to like play in rated tournaments to get that. I don't really particularly care about the rating. So I'm very happy just playing. Like my favorite types of stuff that I would do is when I would play in tournaments, I love Skittles games. I just love playing random blitz games. It didn't count for anything. I would just play random people. Like I would go into the Skittles room. I played, I don't know if you know who Liam Putnam is.
Nope.
He's like 2,300. He might even be higher than that now. I don't know. He's a really talented kid. He was 1,700 at the time when I played him. And I played Max DeLuigi, right? I've played a whole bunch of random people in Skittles games, where I would love playing in tournaments, and I would play the skill. I would just basically play Blitz endlessly, unrated Blitz endlessly. It was just so much fun. But the rated stuff, I'm not really so concerned about the rated. I just like playing. That's basically the thing.
You've achieved 2,200. Is it the type of thing like you're done? Because some guys do that, and I understand it because it's so competitive now that it's like, all right, I achieved 2,200. I'm not going to mess with it. I'm just going to teach. I'm going to retire from playing. Or do you have aspirations to become like an IM or something like that?
Yeah, I think even before IM, I'd even had to try to get even FIDE Master, which I don't even know if, like, I would think if everything in the chess world went right for me, maybe I could hit FIDE Master. I don't think my results against top players, like stronger players than me, and even my own players around 20 were not great. For most of my results that I got, I had really good results against people below 2,000. Once I started moving up above 2,000, my results started to deteriorate really badly. I don't think I can get any higher. And if I don't know if I really want to dedicate my entire life to like getting the rating up. I enjoy playing, right? But I don't think that, like you said, it's super competitive. And the other thing is, what's the benefit, right? So the other thing is like, I got the title, which I'm happy about. But anything above that, like hitting 2,300 is kind of the same as 2,200, but I would have to spend a lot of time. And I thought, okay, the only thing I would think is like, I would want to go into maybe like an open, maybe next year, or maybe playing USAID again, right? And just see how I do against the top players. But for me to try to, move up to 2,300, 2,400, I think that's a bit of I don't think I'm that good. To be honest, I think I got a little lucky at 22. I think my rating might be a little inflated. Like if I were to play, again, I'd probably be, I might start moving down, right? I had a very long non-lose streak, but I think at some point, I don't think I'm going to go much further.
Well, I mean, swings are normal, but I think you're downplaying it a little bit. I mean, you're not going to get a 2,200 rating based on, luck alone. But I mean, I know what you're saying. There is a certain thing in chess where like, sometimes the stars just align the right way. And it's like you were saying, you had a few games where you were clearly losing and then you got some draws out of it. But if the opponent has a decent enough rating, that can actually boost your rating and things like that.
Right.
So let me go back to the beginning a little bit. So you're how old now, Nick?
I am 26.
26. Oh, you're a young pup. 26. If you need, if we need to take a break and I'll get you a juice box and a nap, you just let me know, okay?
You know what? That doesn't sound like a bad idea, to be honest. You're handing out juice boxes? I'll definitely take some.
Hey, who doesn't like a good juice box, right?
I'll take it. I'll definitely take it. After a full day of work, I'll take it.
Yeah, no, I'm just busting chops. But I mean, 26, and what's great about that, you have your whole, life. I mean, should anything change your schedule, or should you decide you do want to pursue like an FM title or something, you could always go down that road. But now, can you tell me a little bit about when you started playing chess? Because I mean, it must have been young if you're only 26 now. Like, just give me a little background on like when you started and that whole thing.
I wasn't that athletic in school, so I remember I played soccer, and at some point we got to 6th grade, and it was like tryouts, right? And I was kind of bad, like really bad. So I was probably, if they had 50 kids, I was probably like number 50. So I didn't make the soccer team, and I wasn't that athletic or good at sports. So I don't know how I found chess, but I remember my parents were saying, you got to do something, extracurricular. You can't just like sit there and play video games all day. Somehow, me not making the soccer team got me into chess. as funny as that is.
Okay, and then like how old are you around at that time?
It was middle school, so I was probably like 6th grade tryouts, I'm thinking, or maybe the 7th grade, somewhere around there. I don't remember exactly.
And how did you develop as a player? Like, when did you like really get into it? Like, did you start reading books?
I was always into it, but the funny thing is, like, I know the viewers are going to want to hear from like what exactly I did, like, okay, what books to read or whatnot. But I was doing so much chess that I don't even think I could even give you a particular thing. Like, for example, I would be part of a club. I went to Long Island Chessmates, ran by Grandmaster Gennady Sigalchik. He was like one of my first so-called coaches, and I learned the game from his organization. I would play I'll be honest, I did not really like sitting for a lecture, right? I didn't really like just listening. I would way rather play blitz. Like, if I could just play blitz all day, I'd just do it.
I would have never guessed that about you. I had no idea you were into blitz that much.
I love it. Like whenever I go to a tournament, my favorite thing to do is go to Skittles room and just play blitz against. I don't even care who they are, just random people. I'll just play blitz. What's nice about it is particularly like on chess.com, I'm kind of going on a tangent here, but on chess.com, they have that game review feature where I could just play a blitz game, 2 seconds, see exactly what tactic I missed or what theoretical thing I'm supposed to follow. Then next game. I that's my favorite thing. So like when we would do that when I was a kid, we would have an hour lecture, which I would have to sit through or whatever it was. And then we would just play, and I would just love playing the game. I just love playing. I would just play tons of games. That's basically how I got started. But other things I did, like I've read books. Like I've read Jeremy Silman's Reassess Your Chess. I really like that one. I've read there's the book by Mikhail Shereshevsky. I forgot, it was an endgame book. I also, any of my advanced students, I had them read that book as well. That's a really good endgame book. I've read that one numerous times. I've done so many other chess related things. Like the funny thing is, it's not even like able to pinpoint specifically. Like, for example, I remember when Magnus was playing Vishy Anand in India, and I would wake up at like 4:00 in the morning to watch the broadcast. And then after school, I would like fall asleep watching the broadcasts. I've done like so many, that doesn't even get into how many puzzle rushes or tactics I've done, which is almost like an endless amount as well. So I think a combination of doing like hundreds and hundreds of hours of puzzle rush, blitz games, watching grandmaster analysis, falling asleep to broadcast. I've done so many hours of chess. I think that in combination, all those things together kind of, got me to where I am. It isn't necessarily like I've read one specific book that really changed my my thinking. It's just so much stuff that I did.
Yeah. So you're an example of the whole, 10,000 hours theory at work.
Probably closer to 100,000, but
yeah. Well, there you go. So you immersed yourself in the culture and playing. So it was more that than like a specific study plan.
Right. Yeah, I never really had a study plan because for the most part, I enjoyed playing the game so much. I never really took into the account like I remember when I hit 2,000, a couple people congratulated me saying, "Oh, that's a really good achievement." And to be honest, I was just playing in tournaments and I was just having a good time. Most of my play style was basically like I don't really care if I draw or obviously you want to win, but I didn't care if I drew, right? So my personal mission in games were like at all costs do not lose the game, right? So like if someone looked back at my profile, I had tons of draws in the first like couple of years that I played. I might even have more draws than I had wins at some point. But my personal philosophy was don't let them beat you, right? It doesn't matter if you draw the game. And sometimes they might even get so frustrated. I might even win. I've had games where some players would get so frustrated they would try to beat me. And I would end up beating them because they would go so hard to try to beat me. And it worked out a lot because a lot of times being so-called unbeatable or just focusing on not making a mistake, my opponents, wouldn't be able to beat me, and draws were okay. I didn't mind draws at all.
As far as your push to 2,200, you spoke about that a little bit and how you had that streak of like no losses, but later on, like this last, sort of part of your journey where you got up to 2,200, were you studying anything different or was it just really just playing?
No. I to be honest, my what do you call it? My regimen has not really changed, right? My routine, I would play a lot of blitz. I'll do I actually started doing a lot more tactics now. I'm still thinking if I want to even continue like trying to play in an open and see how well I do. So I'm trying to get myself still sharp. I play a lot of blitz. I watch the main tournaments that go on. I follow the chess stuff. I follow the chess news, but I don't do anything special, right? It isn't like I read some special book or something. I've read a lot of chess books just as I enjoy them, but I much rather play. So I play a ton of blitz games. I play I do a lot of chess related stuff. So most of my day to day is okay. I'll just play a couple hours of blitz maybe. Not well. The funny thing is when I was a kid, I would be able to play a lot more. Obviously, high school went out at 2 and then I could play. But now with work, sometimes I have to stay late and stuff like that. And I can still put in a lot of blitz games, but I it's much easier to play when you're younger. Plus you have more energy too. And starting to notice that, as you get older, it's kind of like, okay, I got all these responsibilities to do. And now it's kind of like, I'm kind of tired. Nothing really changed on my end. I basically just play games and analyze.
And when you say you play a lot of blitz, what kind of time controls were you playing?
I play 5-0, and actually it's kind of funny. So a lot of my games are against Jay Bonin on chess.com. I've tallied it. We have almost 100 games on chess.com. And, for the situation that he's in, I'm impressed that he's able to play so well. He kills me in a lot of the games. So Jay is like really, really, really good. I of course, am able to hold my own, but he still puts the smackdown on me. he really gets me in a lot of games.
How is he doing?
I do not know. I know he's still playing chess because even though he isn't playing tournament chess, which he used to rule, he used to play the most active player. I remember going to tournaments, they would always say he's the most active player. He's not playing anymore, but he's playing on chess.com because I get him in all different. Sometimes if I'm at 12 o'clock on a lunch break, I'll be, okay, I'm going to play a chess game. And I get Jay Bonin. And then sometimes at like 5 o'clock, I'm like, all right, let me play some chess games. I just finished my day. I want to, let off steam. Let me play some chess games. And I'm playing Jay Bonin. And, we've played close to 100 games. And it's a lot of fun, to be honest. And to know that I'm playing, people that I know. I've played Jay. We've taught at the same classes before. We've done one of them. I don't remember the class anymore. It was a long time ago. Maybe it was one of the classes in Roslyn. I can't remember. But we've done. I know Jay, and it's kind of cool to kind of know because like I get a lot of random people on chess.com, and I get a lot of spoof accounts and stuff like that. And then I have to get points back later if that. And I have to play Stockfish half the time. So it's kind of fun playing people that I know.
For those of you who don't know who Jay Bonin is, International Master Jay Bonin. He's a friend of ours. He's a friend of the club. He was, like you were saying, like the most active tournament player like ever, or one of the most active tournament players ever. Like he was playing like 4 or 5 nights a week. Yeah, I'm sure many of you listening may have heard of Jay, but shout out to Jay because he's a good guy. I used to play against him at the Queen's Chess Club many years ago when I was first starting in tournaments. So hope he's doing well. I haven't seen Jay in a while, but yeah, but very, very, very good people.
And one other thing I want to say about Jay, the 100 games that I've played against Jay, he is so tricky. His handle is Bonin Knights on chess.com, and he really what do you call it? Really knows how to use the knights, knows how to use like there are certain things he'll come up with a combination a couple moves later, and I'm like, oh, that's what he's thinking about. So it's just like he's still way ahead of me, and I really respect how well he plays, even in the situation that he's in now.
Yeah, he's very creative player. It's like this, I wouldn't call it an aggressive style. It's just this, it's this like aggressive creatives. It's like you said, it's like you don't know what he's doing, but it's like really sneaky and really effective.
Right. Absolutely. Yes. And he also handles the open. Obviously he's been playing forever, so he handles the opening very well. And usually I just get, until I've had to start studying a lot of theory against him, because if I don't know what I'm doing in half these sideline Grunfelds that he's playing, he like wipes me out. So I have to really, the Grunfeld's one of the ones where you just have to know your theory, which I kind of try to avoid, but playing an international master, you're going to have to know a little bit.
I want to ask you about your openings.
Right.
When you're playing like over the board, maybe you could talk about over the board and then online blitz. Do you play the same openings for both? Do you change it up? Do you have a standard opening repertoire that you use? Curious what your deal is on that.
So I do have a standard repertoire. So it depends on if I'm playing blitz or I'm playing tournament. Tournament chess, I 100% always go knight f3, g3, bishop g2, castle, do whatever you want. And then I go c4, b3, knight c3, bishop b2. I'll just move the pieces around, right? Some people have told me that's like too tame, like I should really do something more aggressive. But I kind of like doing it because it's kind of like it allows my opponent to do whatever he wants, and a lot of times they might set it up wrong too. I've had a lot of people that set up the structure wrong, and they get reverse Grunfelds or bad Catalans, and I think it works pretty well. In blitz, I'll play e4 mainly because my openings that I have aren't tactical. So I will play crazy stuff online to try to get my tactical. I gotta the way I got to master basically is playing locked positions for an endless amount of time, basically going to an end game. And when I play players that have a good tactical understanding, like someone like Jared Tavares, I want to have a good calculation skill because I know he's gonna start killing me with the tactics. So I'll play crazy stuff. I'll play Smith-Morr is not really tactical, but I'll play like a Wynn Gambit, right? Or I'll play an Evans Gambit, or I'll play all sorts of different kind of gambits online. I'll play crazy gambits with the idea of just trying to get my tactical sense better, because my repertoire is mainly just playing really close positions where I don't have there's not really a lot of tactic. To be honest, I don't think my tactical skills are that great. So what I would do is I would kind of maneuver around. I kind of like, all right, I like playing the lock position. I'll lock it up and I'll make a certain type of break that I need to make later on in the game. And that's what I've basically been playing. I play endgame almost every single time someone offers up an endgame to me in the tournament game. I'm in an endgame every single time because I enjoy playing them. And I don't know, my opponents might not. They might not like it because they want to try to crush you or checkmate the king or whatever. And I'll just be like, all right, let's trade the queens. Like on move 8, if someone offers up a queen trade, I'm like, all right, let's go into an endgame, right? If it's a draw, it's a draw, but I'll play a lot of really good moves. I'll try to improve my pieces, and it's a lot of times somehow I ended up winning. So I don't know.
Right, but you don't like in your over the board games, you don't like forcing things or sort of trying risky moves, right?
I try to avoid the tactics because I don't think that was particularly my forte. I think I was stronger playing positional endgames. So I would almost avoid the tactic, which is also another reason why I struggled against Tavares. He would turn the game into like a tactical nightmare, where there just crazy stuff going on. Where a lot of times, if I play a player and they're willing to go in an end game, I'm very happy. Right? I love playing in the end game, and I'll be like, all right, I'll play that all day. But I need to get tactically better because I know there's going to be a lot of players that are going to test me. Right? So I would play all sorts of crazy stuff. I've played a ton of games online, so I would play like crazy stuff. And for black, I still have my same repertoire I had for black that I do play over the board. Now this is kind of nice that I can say this because I'm kind of like retired now. Because someone would look up my chess.com profile before they play, like, oh, what does Nick play with black? Oh, this is the line he plays, and then I'm gonna get like prepped to the moon. But so I would play the French defense as black, which is a good maneuvering opening, although you get some really bad positions. And I would play the Grunfeld, e4, e6, I would play the French. And against d4, I'd play the Grunfeld if they allowed it, unless they did something like I think you play the London system, right? So then it's different. If they allow the Grunfeld, I'll play the Grunfeld, which is kind of interesting because if I can get a reverse Grunfeld with white, and I like the Grunfeld with black, I can play at a tempo up with white. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, and that's funny. Your style that you were mentioning, that's kind of how I like to do it as well. Just, very positional, happy to trade queens, go into an end game. I don't always have as much success that you've had, but that's generally what I'm more comfortable doing. And I find I win more games that way, but I agree with you. I'm more positional. I think my tactics definitely need some work. I can be very tactical when I need to be, but like you said, when you're playing the players like Jared, where they want every game to be like a tactical nightmare, you really have to be ready for that.
Right. And it's just a style. I know Tavares likes playing those types of things. So when I played against him, I would always try to go into. Now he never liked going to the end game. He would never want to go into end game with me. He would, like, whenever I offered a queen trade, he would always move the queen away, or he would go for these big attacks, which is his style, right? And then I'd be like, oh, I have to really defend this. Whereas like other players that I would play, if they go into an end game, they're like, let's just say I'm playing a lower rated player that isn't Tavares, who's like right around 1900. They might try to go into an end game thinking, oh, let's trade off all the pieces. But then all of a sudden they might give me like the bishop pair or the isolated queen pawn or something that I can target. And then I just play to like move 80 in a position where I can't really lose. And then I would just play it on forever. So I like those types of games because I would have very little risk of losing, and I could just play it for a very long time, and my opponent might just get tired of defending after a while.
Yeah, it's those positions where you can't lose and you might win, right? That's what they call those. You can't lose and you might win.
Exactly. Yes, I think I've maximized those types of positions to get to where I was.
Now, is there anything that you tried as you were moving up the ratings ladder that didn't work? Anything you tried and it's like, I have to stop doing this, or any bad advice you received?
I have a couple. So I know at one point I stagnated around 2000. 0 to 2000 for me was pretty quick. I was gaining points very quickly. I was getting 200 points a year, 200. So I think even one year I might even had 400. I don't remember. I know I gained 200 points in a tournament at USCF. That was pretty crazy. But once I hit 2000, it was kind of like I hit a wall. Like there was almost nothing I could do to improve. And I would still use, it was kind of funny, throughout my entire chess career, I would play this knight f3, g3, bishop g2, castle. It's King's Indian attack, Catalan hybrid, whatever you want to call it. It would be like this weird transposition I would play. It got me a lot of draws too. Like I didn't have the technique back then. What happened is I started improving a lot with my technique in these maneuvering positions. So I was able to get a lot of wins that were draws years ago. But I was drawing a lot of games. And at some point, I made the switch to e4, which was really bad. I lost a lot of because the problem is with e4 is then you get the Sicilian, and then I played Najdorf Sicilians, and you get a tactical nightmare. And I'm just like, all right, this is pretty. I lost a lot of. I played maybe a couple games with e4, and I got Sicilian Najdorfs, and the theory that you have to know. I had a course by Daniel King in the Nightorf, and I remember all the different lines he would tell me about which one I'm supposed to do, which one I'm not supposed to do, or whatever. And it was just so much theory and so much crazy stuff going on in Nightorf. And I'm thinking like, okay, this is clearly worse. I got to go back to my strategy of like, all right, you know what? If it's a draw, it's a draw. But me getting killed in Nightorfs is not really the answer. So yeah, that didn't really work out. The other thing that I would say is you don't want to force things. I had this issue a couple times where it's like, okay, you're so frustrated, you want to get a win, and objectively, like sometimes I might get like, let's just say when I was grinding up the ladder around 2100, and I'm like, okay, I want to get a win because I want to move up, and I force things, and this is what happened with some of my losses. I forced positions where I'm trying to play for a win where I'm actually worse. And I remember I talked to Harold Stenzel about this, and he even said you have to try to what do you call it? You have to try to equalize before you try to play for a win in a worse position. And he's right. It was kind of a bad idea, bad thing that I did. And it was mainly about trying to get a win, but you can't really do it in every single position. You kind of have to let it come to you. So you're like, all right, you know what? We're just going to play this till the end of time and see what happens, basically. You can't be like, all right, I'm forcing a win here. And, then you start losing. At least that's what my perspective has happened.
Right. And I've experienced what you said as well. There's a lot of players at the club where they'll play you pretty evenly well into the end game. And it's like you said, if with some of the openings I choose, they are a little sort of tame, I guess. Or, because it depends. Like if I play the London as white, that can be very tactical and be very attacking, but it can also be very slow. It really depends on, how I want to do it. Do I want to cement the knight on, E5 and then knock castle and, H4 and all that? Or do I want to castle kingside and then play slowly on the queen? It really depends. I tend to be more positional, but what I notice is a lot of players, they'll hold their own. And then it's like you said, you just keep dragging it out and then boom, they make that one mistake and they're done.
Yes, and sometimes boring them to death is actually a good thing because after the game, sometimes my opponents would be like, "Oh, why would you play such a boring opening?" I'm just like, well, at this point, you kind of got fed up with playing the dry position. You went crazy, and I ended up winning. So in that aspect, I kind of like those types of positions where my opponent will get fed up with playing this horribly boring position, and they'll try to like spice it up in the wrong type of way, right? In the right type of way is like I mentioned, with a type of like Jared Tavares does, where he'll take my French defense and he'll like destroy me with it. But sometimes we're in an end game and we're in a really boring end game, and they're like, all right, I want to try to win this. It's kind of boring. Nothing's happening. And they'll just start like chucking pawns or start going crazy. And like, all right, I'll take it. And then I end up winning the game. But those are the types of positions that I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Just like let them self-destruct. There's a couple of theories out there that, at the amateur level, especially, just try to prolong the game as long as possible. That's one of those, I think that's more like, I don't know if that's a Twitter or a Reddit thing, but that's one of those things out there. Like, try to just prolong the game, make the game as long as possible. Don't try to force anything. Just drag it out as long as possible. And your opponent will drop the ball. I don't know if I'm going to advocate that as a general style, but I think you would agree there's a certain amount of truth to that a lot of the time.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I also think that, it's funny. I get asked a lot, it isn't just coming onto this podcast. I get asked a lot, oh, how'd you get master? What'd you do to get so good? And it's funny because people are expecting I read some sort of like super good book, or I did some sort of like Dvoretsky's Endgame manual or something that, that would say like, oh, I did something really, hard or something. But to me, it was more or less like I tell all the so-called amateur players, right? I'd be like, okay, blunder one less night and your rating will go up, right? And everyone gives me this deer in the headlights type look, like, what? That's the solution? I'm thinking like, if you don't blunder anything, you become impossible to beat. And then then your rating will go up. But I remember I was at your club once, and I was walking around, and this was before the round would start. It's like 7:00, maybe 7:15, and I overhear like two. It could have been like 800 players or 1,000 players. I'm not really 100% sure, but they were talking about how much Caro-Kann theory they knew, right? And I was baffled. I'm thinking like, I don't know that much Caro-Kann theory. Like I don't know any of this. And and they're saying how many different lines they know. And I have a funny story. I was playing in a tournament, and I was rated about 1,800, right? And my knowledge of the black openings went like this. Okay, he went D4. I'm going to go knight F6, and I'm going to see what he does. Maybe I'll go E6 and D5 and play the Queen's Gambit. And that's about it. That's as much theory knowledge as I had. And then I'm like, okay, whatever this guy does, don't blunder a piece, don't hang anything, don't give away any bad squares. Like, don't give him an isolated queen pawn. Don't give any good outposts for him. Don't give him any good diagonals for the bishops. Just play solid. And a lot of times, what would happen is, instead of memorizing all these theoretical lines, it was more or less like my opponent's like, okay, I got this great position, but what do I do? And then half the time it would be like, well, you just get a random position. Because at the club, people are like, oh, I know this Caro-Kann move to like move 15 or whatever. I'm thinking like, your game's going to be different after move 4, right? So the whole idea of studying theory forever, to me, was baffling. I'm thinking like, I don't even know how that was fun either. I would just like playing Blitz. But each to their own. But I think people emphasize like the amount of moves that you need to memorize way more than you should. Like the reason why I think this is because a lot of the times in my openings, especially the French defense, if you play a French defense, anyone who's listening, you'll know this. You get really horrible positions. The computer will just like say you're lost, right? In most of my games in the French defense, my positions are just terrible. But hey, I'm just like, all right, I'll just, develop the knight. I'll get the pieces out. Maybe I'll try to castle. Half the time my king's on F8, but I'm like, all right, I don't blunder anything. I try to equalize, and then somehow it just turns around. So I wouldn't like the studying of all the theory is what is just crazy to me. Like all these people like keep saying, oh, all this theory. I think you just got to play good. Just play really good moves. Like I come to the board thinking, okay, I'm going to play all really good moves, and I'm going to hope not to blunder. This basically, I went up from 0 to 2,200. I'm like, okay, I just want to focus on not losing, like not blundering a piece, right? And that's it. That's it. Now, obviously, playing all the blitz game stuff, I improved over time with tactics, calculation, positional stuff. But I think players that want to improve, they definitely need to just focus on don't blunder anything. Like people are like, oh, I need to study openings. I need to study this. And I look at their game and they'll be like dropping the queen, right? So like, all right, you could study openings, but you might want to like not lose your queen.
Good stuff. And you remind me of something from last week. I don't know if you heard last week's episode. We had FM Karsten Hansen on here. Now, he gave a lot of valuable stuff. It was mostly about openings, but the thing that he said for me that was like most powerful, that's been swirling in my head all week, is kind of what you just said. He goes a lot of problems, or he goes the major problem, I should say, with a lot of these opening courses and opening books and, opening videos, whatever it is, just any type of instructional material on the opening, is that it teaches the opening moves and some variations, but then players don't know what to do next, right? It's like they get through the opening, maybe they get through the first 6, 7, 8 moves, and then it's like, now what? It's kind of like the two players at my club that you heard talking about the Caro-Kann variation. Fine, they know these lines, but do they really understand how to go forward and how to progress? And I really think that's a problem with opening study at this level. Now, there's another argument, and I don't agree with this. I've mentioned this. People say, well, don't worry about openings at all until you're 1,800. Don't study openings, just study tactics. That's utter nonsense also. That's too extreme on the other end. You can't not study openings. You have to get to a middle game that's playable, but you also can't just study these, crazy opening lines 15 moves deep, which, as you said, Nick, you're never going to see in a tournament. Because in an amateur tournament, let's face it, for the most part, by move 7 or so, move 8 maybe, it's going to deviate from whatever you learned in a course for the most part. And a lot of players, they just don't understand the themes. It's like they understand the opening moves, but they don't know how to carry that into the middle game and what the plans are. I mean, at least for a lot of players. And I'm not saying every course or every instructional video is like that, but it's definitely a problem, is that players are just learning a certain amount of the opening, but it's not transferring into the ideas that are going to carry through the full game.
I agree with that because, like I teach my students, I won't have them memorize endless amounts of moves. Whatever opening they like to play, I'll be like, okay, that's fine. If you like playing the Roy Lopez, you like playing the Scotch, if you like playing D4, if you like, doesn't matter. Anything you want to play is fine. For the most part, what I teach them to do is I'm like, okay, whatever opening you have chosen, right? Make sure you don't blunder anything. You don't give away good squares to your opponent, right? You don't give away outposts or really strong diagonals. And you don't give any, you focus on almost your entire amount of energy on not losing anything. That's going to improve you a lot more than me telling you, okay, you need to memorize 25 moves of the Roy Lopez, and then there's a special move on move 25 that, you know, your opponent might not know. Because I've been there. I had a good friend, Noah Flum. I don't know if you know him. I don't know if he plays anymore, but we used to be sparring partners, and we would go back and forth, and we learned this French defense, this one-hour French defense. And I remember playing against him about 100 times, right, as practice. And I'm like, okay, no one knows the one-hour French more than me. I'm like, I'm gonna. So I go to the tournament, and I kid you not, the first tournament game I get. Now, by the way, I again, I'm not recommending this to the viewers. This thing that I did, I memorized the 1 hour French to over 30 moves of theory. Right, it was absolutely crazy. I thought no one knew it more than I did. And I get a kid. I don't know if you heard of this kid, Eddie Tian. He was a kid. He was like 8 at the time. He's now he's got to be a teenager now or older, and he's probably even 2,500. I'm not sure. I'd look up his rating again. But at the time, he was maybe 1,800-ish. But he was a talented kid. He was like a really young kid who was really talented. And I get to this 30-move theory, and he knew it more than me. And I was so shocked. It turned out that his coach was the correspondence champion. I can't remember his name. John Hartman, maybe. I think that was his name. That coached him, and he gave him all those lines in the French defense, and he gave all these crazy French defense lines. And I'm thinking like, okay, I'm never going to do that again. I'm not memorizing 30 moves of theory, and then someone's going to know 31 moves, and then I'm going to lose. So I figure, okay, I look for some sidelines that I can play in the French defense that aren't really well known. And I play, I basically try to avoid any sort of like memorization of moves. And I go more or less to plans. Okay, this is what I'm going to try to do. So like, for example, with white, I'm going to try to get I'm going to try to go knight f3, g3, bishop g2, and then castle, then go c4, knight c3. I want to control the d5 square. Then I'll reroute the other knight. I'll go a3, b4. With black, with the Grunfeld, I always want to go like c5, knight c6, g6, bishop g7. And with the French defense, I always want to get in c5. f6 is questionable depending on what French defense position you're in. Kind of difficult to understand the break correctly. It's still hard, and I've played over 5,000 French defense positions. And you know, I basically try to focus on Type's position, like where am I supposed to like what are the maneuvers? Like, okay, the knight usually goes to h6 to f5, right? The queen usually goes to b6. The bishop tries to get trade off on b5. And I try to get ideas like, okay, I trade the bishop off. I make sure the queen goes out to b6. I attack the pawns to c5 and knight c6. But it isn't necessarily like memorization, because it isn't like, you know, your opponent can change with the move order. So it isn't like, okay, you play this exact line. I know what I'm looking for in the position. And then eventually, you know, once my pieces are cleared, I go rook c8, try to attack on the c file, right? So it's all about understanding what you're trying to do in each position. So like in the opening, I'm like, okay, I want to get my pieces out, make sure I'm castled. Then the next thing is, okay, is there a file that I could that I take control over. Okay, if I get a file, then that's great. And then can I enter? That's another thing that's important. If I can enter the file. So it's all about, small little improvements. Okay, I got the file. Now can I enter? Okay, now I enter. Now I get the sound right. Can I double attack things? And so on. So it isn't necessarily about memorization. It's kind of like, okay, where the pieces go. Knight goes on d5, bishop goes on g2, and then you go b4, b5, and then you just attack the queen side. So it's more or less, okay, I understand what I'm supposed to be doing. If my opponent throws a wrench in my plans, I kind of know exactly what like if you play something random and your opponent's like, okay, I don't know what to do, I'm kind of stuck. If you don't have like a base of what you're supposed to be doing, then I think you're right, Neil. I think that's exactly what you've been talking about, that you're after move 8, you're like, okay, what do I do? And you kind of have to understand where the pieces need to go.
Very well said. Yeah, it's all about the ideas. Now, I want to follow up on what you said with something. What about those positions, Nick? Because I'm sure this happens at your level. I mean, from what I've heard, even GMs deal with this. When you face a position where you just have no idea, like it's like, I don't know what the plan is. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. What's your thought process when that happens?
Oh, I would get a lot of those positions actually. A lot of those positions actually occurred in the French defense, because I would get like, since I don't really study that much theory per se, like I don't, what do you call it? My openings aren't that great. So I would get, sometimes if my opponent knows what I'm doing, right? I would get really bad positions. And I'll give you an example, like against Tim Mirable, I would get horrible positions against him. I somehow lucked out against that. I survived those positions, but he knew what I was playing. We would prepare like lines, and he would prepare this really good line. And I remember I was in a tournament once with him, and he prepared this nice line that was really, really bad for me. And I didn't realize it at the time. And I was sitting there for like 20 minutes, and I'm like, I really don't know what to do. Like exactly what you were saying. The position's absolutely atrocious. And I'm thinking like, okay, maybe the typical maneuver is to get the knight out to h6 and f5, and then but it was such a situation where he was already castled, I'm not castled, he can destroy my pawn structure, and it was kind of really terrible. So I'm kind of like, all right, I'm going to try to go with my typical French defense plans, and I'm going to try to hope that I survive, because even if you get a position that you're not really sure what to do, it's kind of like you do it like a process elimination. You're like, okay, well, this line, you probably just lose immediately. Let's discard that. This line, I might not even survive because I have no counterplay at all, or I have nothing to do, and he's just going to run me over. So like, okay, this line looks dicey, but maybe I'll survive, basically. So it's kind of like, you kind of got to think of it in such a way like that you're not... You're not like gonna make a bad move specifically. Like I try to focus even though my openings aren't great, I try to focus all my energy onto like, okay, let's try to not make a bad move or not allow my opponent to exploit anything of mine. So I try to focus on, okay, where are my weaknesses? What can I, tidy up? And it'll be like, okay, let's not blunder anything. That's basically my MO is like, don't blunder anything. That's basically it.
Right. And that got you to 2,200. And I think for the people listening, and Nick, you tell me if I'm wrong about this, there's really no formula. Because what I find as a person, as an educator, as, a graduate student, just in general, it seems that everybody wants a formula for everything. People think that everything is a formula. You want to make master, step 1, do this, step 2, do this, and then step 10, and then you have it. You agree that doesn't work that way, right?
If I could agree with you more than 100%, it would probably be like 1,000%. I know a lot of people, like especially when I talk chess to people, and it doesn't even have to be chess; it could be anything. They're like, okay, what do I have to follow to become like the greatest ever? I'm thinking like, well, logically, like you have to come like this is what baffles me, because you have to think about this logically. Okay, if I can follow this one formula, and I could be the best in the world, wouldn't you think everyone would be the best in the world? so it's like, all right, all I gotta do is follow this one formula and I'll become great. Like I've heard people say this, like they'd be like, oh, I just gotta follow this one thing and I'll become grandmaster. And I'm thinking like, well, have you known that like 1% or less of the tournament population, it's probably less than 1,000. It's like 1,000 people, right, become grandmasters, right? Of all the people to play chess. I'm thinking like, well, the logic has to be a little flawed. Simply think that, oh, I'm just going to become a grandmaster if I study 10 tactics a day. More often than not, it's like everyone who hits grandmaster is probably talented. So it's more or less who's willing to work like a more of a maniac, right? So instead of doing 6 hours a day, some people might do 12 hours a day. Like I've read crazy stuff that people study and train all day long, and that's basically what it'll take. And this isn't just a chess related thing. It's in general in life. People like the shortcuts, right? So like for example, this whole crypto thing, right? I remember there were comparisons of like Warren, like this guy that Sam, whatever his name was. He's like, oh, he's an ex Warren Buffett, and then during the recession he just collapses because everyone wants to like get rich quick, or everyone wants to get to the top quick. And I recently started browsing the chess.com forums. Sorry, I'm all over the place here, but I recently started browsing the chess.com forums, and a lot of them are like, is there any shortcut to like becoming like an amazing? And there was some beginners in some of the clubs too that would ask me like, okay, how quickly can I make master? And I'm thinking like, this is even before I hit master. I'm thinking like, well, that's kind of almost insulting in a way. Because like they would come to one game and they would be like, oh, I want to hit master. And I'm thinking like, yeah, me too. And I've been playing for 15 years. so they'd be like, they come to the board, right? And they'd be like, oh, I want to hit master in like 6 months. And I'm like, okay, well, do you want to study every single day for like 8 hours? No, I just want you to award it to me. And everyone is so about the quickness of how quickly they can do things. Whereas like a lot of things that are worth achieving, it takes a lot of time. It isn't like, oh, if I were able to get master or any sort of achievement, it doesn't matter what. It could be school related, it could be promotion at work. If I were able to do it in 5 seconds, would that really be worthwhile of you pursuing, right? But people are so title oriented or achievement oriented. They're like, oh, I just want to add this to my thing that I can brag about, or whatever they want to do.
Right. It's the instant gratification society that we're living in.
Exactly. And this isn't just chess. I mean, I see it a lot in chess because people always ask me these questions, but it's everything, right? Like I was saying with the whole Warren Buffett thing. Warren Buffett had a famous quote once where he's like, "No one wants to get rich slowly." I think it was Jeff Bezos asked him a question. He's like, "Your philosophy was so genius. Why doesn't more people do it?" And his reaction was, "No one wants to get rich slow. People always want to get rich quick." Same thing for chess. No one ever wants to get good slowly, where you just improve. Everyone wants to get rich or good very, very fast. Like, how quickly can I become grandmaster? How quickly I become master? How quickly can I do this? And in the process, you got to enjoy what you do. I mean, I don't understand how you get very far without even enjoying what you do.
Yeah, but like you said, the journey to, even if it's just to increase your rating, 200 points or something, it's you have to put the time in and the work in. Even if you're an adult improver with limited study time, which is most of us, you still have to put something in. You still have to play in tournaments, and you have to pay your dues. And it's not something, again, there's no formula, there's no magic button. But the comments you made earlier, Nick, like, all the comments, like people say, oh, how can I make master in 6 months? How can I make master in a year? How can I increase my rating by 100 points in 2 months? It just doesn't work that way. It's different for everybody. And there's a lot of factors. There's a luck factor. There's how your tournaments go. I mean, you could have an amazing tournament. So you could play in one tournament that's 5 rounds. I mean, this happens. And let's say you just have an amazing outing. Yeah, your rating could shoot up 200 points from that one tournament. But you know what? It could also go down 50 points or 100 points. I mean, there's a certain luck factor, but there's also just different variables that you can't control.
Yeah, it depends on your style. So I'm guessing, again, I don't know. I haven't seen like a player like Tavares' style, but I'm guessing that he might have a lot of really good wins, and he might also, with his his style, he might also get a lot of losses as well. It depends on like what you're willing to do. Like I like my example is Tavares because he always wants to play for a win, which I respect, right? And that's a good thing because again, me as the higher rated player, if my opponent wants to get a draw, it's frustrating to play. So he always wants to try to get a win. You know, you might be risking a loss as well if you're not willing to take a draw as well. That's the other issue, is that if you're not, my thing is that I didn't care if I got a draw. I got as many draws as I got wins years ago. But if you really want to win every single game and you're trying very hard, you're playing these Sicilian night-offs, these crazy tactical positions, you're going to have huge swings, right? I didn't have a lot of swings up or down. I mean, I improved a lot, so my rating went up a lot, but I didn't have huge swings because the types of positions I had weren't really tactical. Is okay, who plays the better game? It depends on your style. I would think that if you're playing a lot more tactical games, you can have a lot more win streaks and a lot more lose streaks. But again, I have no idea. I'm not really a tactical person, so I'm more or less positional. I would have more average or inline performances where I would maybe gain 50 points, right? But I would try to limit my losses. I would try to okay, if I get a draw and my rating doesn't increase, okay, fine. So that was my style. Everyone has their own way to do it. But again, there's no formula. Like you said, Neil, there's no, and that's true in life. I mean, there's no formula in anything. I mean, you could literally walk down the street and maybe you're offered a great job or you have a whatever. And then other times it's like, okay, you do all the right things and you still fail, right? So I don't think there's any secret thing. And people like say like, oh, you know, what kind of secret things did you do that everyone that no one else knows about? I don't have a good answer for you because what do you call I'm basically like a normal person. People are like, oh, you know, how do you become master? I'm like, I don't know. I just, you know, played good games. I focused on not losing. You know, there isn't like a secret sauce.
Very, very well said. So, Nick, I think I'm going to end it there. So I want to thank you, Nick, for coming on the podcast. Some really good insight. Really enjoyed hearing your story. And, you know, I appreciate the very, you know, sort of realistic and honest path that you took to get to 2,200. Because, again, I think a lot of players out there think it's just, you know, step one, do this, step two, do this. And it really doesn't work that way. So I appreciate you sharing your story, Nick. Thanks a lot for coming on.
No problem, Neil. And it is an absolute pleasure. We do a lot for chess, especially the tournament directing, allowing people to play, especially during the pandemic. It is really, really nice to talk to you.
I appreciate it. So a reminder for everyone listening, there will not be an episode next week. I'm taking off for Thanksgiving weekend, and I'll drop a new episode on December the 4th. And as always, I hope you win your next game. Have a great day, everybody.